2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brandon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast. I'm Brandon.
I'm Tyler. We're brothers.
We're therapists.
We're not afraid of your questions.
So bring it.
Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast. We are so glad that you are with us today. We are so grateful for the support that we've started to receive as we've kind of started this new project. Really appreciate those of you who have reached out to us both privately and with your reviews. And it's been really fun so far, and we're excited to have a really cool guest on today, someone new that neither of us have ever spoken to before. But before we get to our guest with some questions, we're going to go to a review.
Okay, so this comes through iTunes, and it says Game Changer. This is my new favorite podcast on this topic. The topics they hit, as well as the different perspectives of Tyler, Brandon, and the guests of the week have all been helpful. I love the topics y'all have hit, and I'm grateful for your advice and tough love. This is a gnarly journey of recovery, but I'm here for it, and I'm trying to do the work to find my recovery while my husband does or doesn't do his. Thank you, Therapy Brothers.
Awesome. Thank you for your reviews.
I like that gnarly journey of recovery, because that's what it is. So that's well put.
Yeah. So we're really excited today because this is sort of the essence of what we want to have happen on our show. We want people to call in with questions, real live questions that will be applicable to not only whoever's calling, but to people who will be listening. And we're really grateful to have Glenn on our show today from Washington. So Glenn, welcome.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Would you, Glenn, why don't you just jump in and give us a little bit of context, background, and let's get into your first question.
Sure. Well, I was looking, how I even found you guys is just weird. Well, not weird, but I can see God's hand in it, right? You know, I use Facebook. You know, I know you're on Facebook Live right now. And I looked up sex recovery, and yours, one of your pages, you have a few pages there on Facebook popped up, and I thought, what is this? And you have all these videos up, and there's this whole, it seems like there's this whole ministry or a whole like bunch of therapy resources that you guys offer, and it was all on Facebook, and I thought, man, where have I been? You know, this is, and of course, I mean, I'm not always searching, you know, sex recovery on Facebook. It's usually old friends and stuff like that. But you know, I found your information and just sent some questions out to you guys about, and then I think you answered the question there, Tyler, my email. And this is all just within a week. Like everything happened fast. You guys provided a phone number, call the number, and you guys called me on Father's Day of all times. Like I thought you guys were super busy, but I got a phone call Father's Day and email Father's Day, and I thought, man, these guys are pretty responsive to people that are seeking help. And then here we are. It's not even a week later after Father's Day, and I'm on a live podcast with two people I've never met before in person. One through email, right? But yeah, that's how I found you guys. And I'm not sure how much you want me to share of my background, or
Maybe just enough to help us know the context of what might be behind the questions you're going to ask, and then just ask your first question.
Sure. So I grew up in a large family. There's 7 kids, and I'm number 6 of 7. And so I'm part of the younger. It's weird to say that now. I'm 47, but I'm the younger of the children, younger end of it. And I don't know, for some reason, my dad was really, I guess, extra protective, and maybe of all the kids. There's five boys and 2 girls. For some reason, I was the one that he chose to abuse, sexually abuse. And I remember it happening all through my childhood up until 5th grade, because something started happening in 5th grade. I started going through puberty, and suddenly the things we were doing, things he was doing to me, suddenly didn't feel right. The whole time I thought, this is cool. Dad only chooses me. I'm the only one. It's our special time. It was something I thought was normal, something that I thought was special even, until puberty hit, when suddenly my sexual development is starting to happen, and just, whoa, something's wrong here. This doesn't feel right anymore. This doesn't feel. And I remember the last time it happened, it was 5th grade, and I remember pushing him. We were in the bathroom, and I pushed him away so hard that he broke the towel rack. Like, he backed into it and he broke it, and I said, "No, Dad, no more." And I remember running out of the bathroom, and I came back later, and he's fixing the towel rack. That's the last thing I remember, and that's the last time anything happened. And we never really talked about it. We never really, after that, it was just kind of, I moved on, grew up, we just never really talked about it.
Yeah.
So there's
Glenn.
the background there. Yeah.
Wow, Glenn. Takes a ton of courage to share what you just shared, and I can only imagine what the process has been like for you. I know that was kind of the background behind one of your questions. What's the question you want to have a discussion on today, Glenn?
All right. Well, my first question is, as a survivor of childhood sex abuse, how do I overcome that dreadful feeling that God abandoned me during the times the abuse was happening, all the way up through 5th grade? I've always been a believer. I've always had a intimate relationship with God. But as my relationship developed and became even closer, as I became an adult and started to own my own faith, I just felt like, man, where were you back then? Why didn't you? You've helped me by stopping other things in my life, or been there for my solace. But then, back then, I'm a child. I don't have survival skills yet. Where were you? Why did you let it happen?
Yeah.
And that's just something I've always pondered. And I know He's a gracious God. I know, things happen for a reason. I just can't wrap my mind around why this is not something that should happen. There's no really good reason something like this happens to someone.
Yeah. Glenn, I I don't know if I have an answer for you on that one. I don't know why things like that happen, and why God allows things like that to happen. Um, it it's it's horrific and it's unfair. And um, but I do know this, that when things like that happen, um, I've seen people go in different directions with it, where they live a life um, angry toward God and resentful, or they become resilient and um, they learn, they grow, they become warriors in their lives for healing and peace. And I don't understand why that happened. I don't understand why your dad would ever do that. As a father myself, um, I realize he had his own demons, and there were reasons why he did what he did. But it still baffles me why. Um, I can tell already. I've talked to you now for 10 minutes, and I can tell already that you're a resilient person who wants to live a healthy, happy life despite the trauma that you've been through. Um, if you don't mind me asking, what did this trauma lead to? Did it lead to some addictive behaviors? How have you tried to cope with the pain?
Well, definitely. Um, one way is I don't ever. There's this. It's weird. I don't ever want my dad to think he won, or like he damaged me so much that you know, I'm I'm unfixable. Um, and so my relationships with girlfriends and they've always been sexual. They've always started off really sexual because I feel like I got to prove to me, prove to them, even prove to my dad who doesn't really know about my you know intimate parts of my girlfriend's relationships. But there is something in me that I got to prove it to him that I can still. He didn't screw me over so bad that I can't sexually arouse a woman. That I can't be this like stud.
Right.
And I feel like I feel like I always have to prove in my relationships that I'm this like sexual superstar, that what my dad didn't affect me. But it's so it's so hard to like perform or to like feel like I need to keep up that image. And no one's making me. No one said, oh, you're not man enough, or you're not, what kind of person are you? What kind of man are you? This, you're not sexual enough. You're not. And I have this confused image of what it means to be a man. First and foremost, I have to be super sexual. I have to be able to know the in and outs of sexual intimacy in a relationship that proves I'm just like the Superman, right? And I didn't. No one's told me that. No one's ever pointing me that direction. It's inside me that I have to prove that, like that my dad didn't. And for some reason, it's always I got to prove to dad that he didn't. And I don't know why. I'm still, even today, I still do these things that I need dad to give me the thumbs up of approval on this, or I want him to know that he didn't. Deep down, I really want him to know that he didn't affect me as bad as he thinks he might have. But obviously, maybe not in that area, but obviously in other areas, I'm here talking to you guys, right? He affected me. Glenn, he affected you. He did something horrible. You're still dealing with it as an adult. Over 40 years later, you're still dealing with it. He affected you. Why, but I just want to like prove to him that
Yeah.
he didn't ruin me.
Yeah, Glenn, I think part of what you're bringing up here, it reminds me of a book by Dan Allender called Healing the Wounded Heart. That's the name of the book, and that'd be a great resource for you to maybe check out after the episode. But part of what he talks about there is, first, Glenn, like, your response is actually shows that there's some resiliency in you because you're a fighter and you're trying to prove yourself. And it also illustrates a point that when we have these experiences, especially as young children, we are subjected to traumatic things that affect the way that we see the world, that we see ourselves, that we see relationships. We call them, in our treatment, we call them false agreements, where there are these belief systems that get established without us really meaning to have them be established, without us really knowing, that then have an effect on our lives until we confront those false beliefs and begin to live from a place of truth again. And I hear in you that there's that wrestle, and part of the wrestle is with God and with a higher power, in addition to a wrestle with your own identity as to what it means to be a real man, and masculinity, and those agreements that you're living by. You're being able to speak them now, a couple of them, and you're starting to tease them out. And the challenge is now we have to figure out how to go back into those places and give some attention to those wounded places where those agreements were formed, apply some compassion to those places, and then offer a new narrative, a new story, something else that doesn't leave you being not worthy of God's love, or not enough man for your dad, or whatever else it is that you're carrying around.
I going along with what Tyler's saying, those identities or agreements that they feel so automatic that sometimes it's hard to be even conscious that they're there and they're running your life. And you have overcompensated for years as an adult to be man enough because of the wounds that you've have been inflicted on you as a child. And it feels backwards because we run from our shame and we run from our pain and we run from our wounds, or we overcompensate. We try to prove ourselves, and those wounds have a ton of power and a ton of energy that can take us over. And our natural response to that is to either run and hide from it or overcompensate. But the way to healing is to go through something, not to run from it. And I love what you said, Glenn, in that it did happen. The pain has been inflicted. And when you can turn and face the beast, when you can turn and look your fear in the eye and realize that you are more powerful than it, that you can deal with the pain that has been inflicted on you, you'll realize the man that you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. As you're talking about that, Brandon, it reminds me of there's these video games I played when I was a kid, either like Galaga or some alien game where you have these mini battles, like 5 of them, and then the 6th one is like the mother, the major monster that you gotta beat, and then you go on to the next level. Each level has their own, like,
right,
main monster, whatever. And I remember as a kid just that feeling, oh, I beat it. I had all these mini battles, and then I beat the main one, and just like me and my friends would get so ecstatic and just high five and like hug and we beat this, we beat the level, and then we go on to the next level. It just reminded me of, when you're talking, just these mini battles, and there's something I have to go through. I have to face this final fury, final, like, level.
I think in the book that I referenced, there's a metaphor that I think really fits for trying to overcome sexual abuse as a child. And part of what the hardest thing is for a child is that usually that abuse comes at the hands of somebody they trust, like your father. And so there's this weird mix of emotions where there's supposed to be this loving relationship, and on one hand it feels really good to feel like you're close and connected and appreciated. But on the other hand, it feels terrible, and it's hard to separate out the false agreements from the truth. And then there's inevitably guilt and stuff afterwards. And the analogy is that when you really get into the work of overcoming and healing from being sexually abused as a child, it's like being put at the front of a forest, and you have to wade yourself through a dark forest only to come to a ravine of big shale, steep rock cliffs that you have to slide down, and then you slide down and you fall into the freezing cold water, and it feels like it's going to drown you, but you have to cross that river, and then when you get to the other side, there's still the other shale bank that you have to climb to the top of, only to find that there's more forest, only to wade through the forest before you finally get through the trees and end up on the other side. And it's kind of like all those little battles. It's not a linear one-time process. It's a constant thing that's pressing, that you're working through, that you're struggling through. And sometimes it feels completely alone, and it feels like you've been totally abandoned by God and everybody else. And you've got these secrets that you've never been able to share with anyone else. And so you carry that load by yourself. And part of how you start to unpack that is to do exactly what you're doing right now, to come and speak it out loud, to start to find safe people to unpack some of those things with, and find empathy, and realize that despite whatever your own doubts are about yourself as a man or as a person, or your weaknesses, regardless of whatever's happened to you, that you are still worthy of love and belonging, and you don't need to have any sex. You don't need to perform in any way to be worthy of that love and belonging. And you put yourself in the right places, and you go to work on those beliefs, and you will emerge. And the beautiful thing about the process that you're in, even though you can't see it right now because the trees are thick and the water's cold, is that when you get to the other side, you don't just heal and become normal. You take this thing that you've been subjected to, and it will become one of the most glorious, beautiful parts of your life, because it will be a beacon for other people. You're going to come through this on the other side, having learned something, having transformed yourself in some way as a new man, and you'll use that to benefit the lives of other people.
Glenn, I want to ask you, going along with Tyler's analogy of the shale, and man, Tyler gets descriptive. This is good stuff. But I want to ask you some questions to try to flush out what it means to actually beat that final battle on Galaga, so to speak, and really hopefully bring it home to you of what it means day in and day out to be able to go through that and beat it. So here's a question for you. A lot of times our understanding of God and our perception of God, it very much relates to our relationship with our Father. And so when we have a lot of father wounds, our understanding of God can be really confusing. You seem like you're a man of faith, but your first question is saying, how do I trust God again? Like, how do you do that? How do you reconcile the wound that has been inflicted on you, and at the same time have enough courage to surrender to God and have faith? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I totally see the correlation with my relationship, between my relationship with my father and how I view God. I mentioned I'm always trying to like impress my dad or gain his approval. With 5 boys, it was really hard to it's hard to do that, to get my dad's attention. And I totally see that with my relationship with God. God, if I'm part of high school ministry at church, will you love me more?
Were you raised religious? Were you raised like in the faith, like very religious?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is even more confusing. You're being abused and at the same time being raised in a religious environment, right? So it's confusing.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I didn't. It was hard to separate the two.
Yeah.
It was hard to see because God, growing up in my family, God was everywhere. I always prayed. I remember always praying as a child. I always, like I said, I always had this intimate relationship with God. I always had a relationship with Him. But yeah, I would do things. If I go to high school ministry, during high school, does that look good to you?
Trying to prove yourself.
Yeah, if I become a leader, if I tithe more than 10% this week, is that
Throw a little extra money in.
Yeah. Would you give me an extra star? I'm also a teacher. I teach third grade, and so I do things in class to help kids with behavior. We have behavior charts, point systems, things like that motivate my students. And same thing in my life with God. God, will I get a gold star if I do this? If I stay after a church service and pick up the pens off the ground and straighten the chairs, does that? And again, it's that what you call it, a false agreement. No one's ever told me to do those things. I innately believe that if I do these things, God will. I'll finally be accepted by God, or I'll finally have that. I'm proud of you.
Yep.
Son, I'm proud of you. Something I never got from my dad. I never got that. Hey, you did good, or look at how much you accomplished. I never really got that from him, and so I transferred that yearning to God, and I would always do these things, as an adult to gain his approval, and maybe it stems back to the question. I feel he abandoned me. Well, if I keep doing these things and being engaged in my faith, engaged in my church, then I know we're still tight.
But Glenn, that's the trick is, like, can you see how that contingency model of God's love actually separates you from God's love? Actually makes it so that you aren't fully experiencing that unconditional grace and love which God can give you. Can you see how that behavior actually gets in the way, although you've thought that it helps? Do you see that?
Yeah, I do now. As I was explaining, there's something it's not a verse, but I've heard this before. You cannot you can't do something to make God love you less, and you cannot do something to make God love you more. He just loves you.
Yes.
Like as I was explaining my what I do, that was in the back of my mind. Like, man, I'm doing these things for him to love. He already loves me. I don't need to. Which
is different than your father, right?
Yeah.
You 5 boys. You at a very young age, you were conditioned to say, I need to participate in this abuse in order to get your attention. I need to do certain things in order to be good enough. I need to prove myself to you. Yeah, God doesn't work that way at all. It's very different. Right?
Len, I can totally relate to you and a lot of what you're saying, man. Like, I've spent the vast majority of my life with an idea of a transactional God where I perform my way into his love. And then of course the performance is never enough. And it's an exasperating task. And it's something that just, it's its own personal hell to have faith, to want to have faith, to know that there's something real about God, and to feel like you're never going to be fully connected. And I think what Brandon's saying is absolutely true. And he's connecting it a little bit to your second question that you were going to ask, which is that, how do I overcome the father wounds that I have when I won't be able to interact with my dad anymore? And Brandon's getting right to the heart of this, which is that I have to figure out, and I've had to learn this for myself. I did the same things, Glenn. I had a good dad, and yet I had him in the way between me and God. And I've had to learn how to set my dad aside and let him just be my dad, who is a flawed man, who was doing the best he could, who made big time mistakes sometimes too, and to allow myself to wrestle with an authentic relationship with God, where I'm not going to necessarily stop doing the things that I believe in my faith, but I'm also not going to do them so that God will love me. You know,
To the what Tyler just described, I've been through some myself, and here's the hard part, and I think here, if we were to describe the battle a little bit, the hard part is you feel like God abandoned you. You feel like God wasn't there for you when you were innocent, and you were wounded, and so you've spent your life running from those wounds. And what we're saying is, you know what, give God a try again, and instead of trying to earn God's love, surrender into the arms of a God who already loves you. And your wounds are going to come up, and your fear is going to come up and say, you haven't, like, you have abandoned me, so why would I be vulnerable to you? Why would I totally surrender over to you so that you can love me? Yet there's probably another part of you, Glenn, that really wants to do that and wants to let God heal these wounds that you have. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah. However, the idea of, there's this image I have of like me like leaning into God, and he's like wrapping his arms around me.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, that is like an act of love, but for some reason in my head, I'm just grossed out by that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want God touching me.
mm-hmm.
I don't want. I don't. And I know it comes from what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't want a man touching me like that,
Right.
where I'm going to fully give myself into him. And I know God's not a man, right? But he's a, father figure, the Bible, that's what he's referred to. And I'm having a hard time separating God figure from from my dad figure.
Yes.
I can't, I don't want to go to him. What happened last time I leaned into a man, right?
Glenn, I'm going to say something that might be hard to hear, but God will be patient with you. God will wait and wait and wait until you're ready. But I do know this, just from my own personal experience and working with all my clients, God does not separate himself from us. We separate ourselves from him, and because of our shame, because of the things Satan tells us and the fear. And when we're ready, God's right there. And when God does hug you, that hug is a much different experience, and way different than what you experienced with your dad. And I'm not saying you should go do it. I'm not saying you should jump in the arms of God. Recognize why you have that fear. But I do think ultimately the threshold for healing for you is going to be being really vulnerable there with God. John Eldredge in Wild at Heart. I don't know if you've read that or not.
It's a good book. It's old.
Yeah. It's one of our favorites.
It's one of the best.
He talks about initiation, and that's what he talks about is, you're no longer fathered by your father, you're fathered by God, and you allow God's love to come in and really give your heart back, your masculine heart back to you. But you won't get that heart back, Glenn, if you're trying to prove things to your dad, right? And if you're keeping God at a distance. So there's going to be a process of vulnerability to step into it. So any other thoughts, Tyler, on that?
Yeah, no, I think this is like such an awesome topic that we're talking about today. And I know that people who are listening are going to be getting a lot out of what we're talking about, Glenn. You've really opened up an opportunity here. I was thinking kind of along the same lines of John Eldredge's stuff, where he says that when we're wounded, God will. Like God, and my own personal experience has been, I've been in those dark places where I've felt completely alone and felt like I wanted to push away and felt like I even questioned God's existence at times. And so I know that that wrestle is real, and I don't know how it ends for each guy. Like every person's going to end a little bit differently, but what I've come to believe is that God is present. God is there. Even though he has to allow certain things to happen because of the rule of agency and choice. But once we're wounded, he will pursue our hearts, and he will wait patiently until we're broken enough in the best way possible that we're able to fall into him. And Glenn, right now, you're not ready for that, and that's okay, man. Like you have a protector inside of you, a way that's helped you to cope and survive for a really long time, that that is pushing away from those things for good reasons. Like you've had to use that protector inside to protect yourself from real people, and so it would make sense that that would translate into your relationship with God. But I believe that as you do that wrestle, things will start to change. And the other part in Eldridge's book that I think was really poignant for me is that, we all have our wounds. We all have this question. The question you've been trying to answer is, am I enough? Like, do I measure up as a man? And you've been doing it in all the ways that you were taught by an imperfect and abusive father. And what Eldridge says is that when we finally start to open up to the fact that we have these wounds, and we start to be open to the idea that God could still be a player in our lives, we can start to look around, and I call them God wink moments. And we can find evidence that there's a God who loves us and cares about us. And that might be the fact that we're having a conversation today. And I know that I'm not trying to sound blasphemous, but who's to say that that wasn't part of what God is offering for you? And you don't have to hug me or Brannon. We can just have a conversation. And I would imagine that there's other places where God is waiting to manifest himself to you and to father you in different ways than your father taught you, in ways that will allow you to feel safe and to feel valued and to feel protected. And if the eyes, spiritual, emotional, eyes begin to open, I believe that God is already there.
Glenn?
Yeah, this is I see God's hand in this podcast. Everything from last week to today, leading up to now, because I want. You're right. My whole life I've been struggling with that. Am I enough? And I want to take the next step or steps. I want to know what I've been doing isn't working. What I've been doing, and God has shown his love to me in different ways. My pastor, there's a pastor in my church, is one of my best friends. I talk to him a lot. I haven't talked to him about this. No one knows about this podcast. And to be even more honest, not everyone in my family knows about the abuse. I've talked to my mom about it and my one of my sisters, but I've never opened up about it. So this being broadcasted is a step, a big step for me. And I thought about it as Chase invited me to come on your podcast. I thought, okay, what are my two questions? And I prayed about it. I prayed about it. Glenn, what do you don't just want to be generic and ask generic questions. You sought help. You're the one that did put the search bar in Facebook and found these guys and found this resource, Love Strong. Go get the help you've been wanting to get your whole life. Don't just don't ask a generic question that doesn't really apply to you personally. And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm just going to put this out there. And maybe it's time my family knows about what happened. Maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe I don't know, because
I hate to say this, Glenn, but I'd be shocked if you were the only one. And I hate to say that. And what I would guess is when you bust it open, which I think you will one day, you're going to have other people have support and love and say, me too. I know what you've been through. And you'll have some connection there.
You're going to be, Glenn, you don't even know this yet, and it'll happen in your own time, at your own pace. You're going to be the transitional figure that changes the whole shape of your family tree. Because, sorry, I'm getting emotional, because of the courage that you're showing to step into this battle, and you're going to have an impact for good, even though it's going to look really ugly on people that you are directly related to, because you're going to open the gates for them. And if there's no other reason why you go through something like this, maybe that's one of the reasons why you go through what you go through. So Glenn, I know we're getting a little bit short on time. We could probably do if we were doing therapy, we'd be doing several hours worth of therapy with what some of your questions are. So I hope that some of this has been valuable for you. Are there any last thoughts that you're having or questions?
No, I'm just like I said, Mitchell, I know God's here today. God's here. I'm ready for the next step, whatever that is, wherever He takes me. I don't know what that looks like. I suddenly do have this sense of courage to call my family and tell them, hey, look, let me tell you what I just did. I suddenly, it's always been the secret, right? But I suddenly just have this it's okay, Glenn, share with them.
But Glenn, the fear could come up. Like, don't do it. Don't. Satan's voice will come up and say, go back to your shell. Go back to your ways of earning your love. And I would just encourage you to this energy, this inertia, this peace and serenity that you're feeling about facing this, however you're going to face it. Remember this feeling right now, and move through this and move forward. You are a courageous man. You're very courageous. Come on. I mean, I'm a stranger to you, Glenn, and you come on, you talk about this, you talk openly. And, Tyler talks about helping your family. You're helping a lot of people too, who are going to listen to this and relate to you. So, you're 47. I'm sure you've done a lot of good in your life already. And, you got a lot of good to do still. When bad things happen, people always say, well, it happened for a reason, and when they say that, is that true?
It makes me sick.
I actually believe it's true, though.
It is true,
but it makes me sick because what they're doing is not empathizing. They're not meeting that person where they're at in their pain. However, it is true. That a little portion of a poem, the tree that never had to fight for sun and sky, air and light, never was a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. The man who never had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil never was a manly man, but lived and died as he began. So, Glenn,
the timber does not grow with ease. The stronger the wind, the stronger the trees. The greater the sky, the greater the length. The more the storm, the more the strength. Through sun and wind, through rain and snow, in men and trees, good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarchs of both, and they hold counsel with the stars, whose broken branches show the scars of many winds and much of strife. This is the common law of life.
Tyler has to always outdo me. But
no, B, I was just finishing it off for you, man.
But that end part is so pertinent here. because Glenn, I believe that you were given this wound because God needs you, and you are powerful, and you are important, and you're one of the strongest. And so that's what I believe. And so if you can continue to face this, you can continue to work through this, you will accomplish your purposes, and you will feel peace and serenity. So thank you, Glenn. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Yeah,
Glenn,
thank you.
I know you're connected in other ways. I would just encourage you that as you continue to step forward, that you continue to develop the resources, a good team, a place to land. It's going to be difficult at times, and you're going to want to have some safe people to fall back into. So continue to develop a good team, and thank you, Glenn. You have done an immense amount of good for a lot of people today. So we're glad to have you on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on. This was literally life-changing right now.
Awesome. Let's stay in touch, Glenn.
For sure.
All right. Thank you.
See you guys.
See you, Glenn.